welcome to the extraordinary meeting. Everybody make sure they've got their phones on silent. So I just might just went on.
Check. No, spare pen. No, it's not getting.
All right. So just the usual kind of background stuff before we get started. Members of the public are welcome to attend, although we don't have any. Please note the meeting is being filmed for live or subsequent broadcast via the internet or social media. It's not the Town Council doing that. We don't record or live stream our meetings. But we do support the principle of openness and transparency and have no objection to the filming and recording at council and committee meetings that are open to the public. We also welcome the use of social networking sites such as Twitter and Facebook to communicate with people about what's happening as it happens. Filming only starts at the beginning of the meeting, when the chair opens the meeting, and finishes when the meeting is closed or when the public are excluded. And also just a quick note that the Town Council resolved from the 15th of May 2023 until the next relevant annual meeting of the Council that they have met the conditions of eligibility as defined under the Localism Acts for parish councils, that we have the general power of competence and the ability to adopt the general power of competence. We're not expecting any fire alarms. If one goes off, it's a real fire, and exits are there and there. The loos are out there if you need them as well. And welcome, everybody. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we received apologies for absence from councillors Bowen, Bergin, Baba Jason, Daniel Jason, Kenyon, Woodall, Shepherd and Thompson.
And Hilary Snell sends her apologies. She got notified at 5 o'clock that there's a delivery coming between 6 and 7. Right. But we'll try and get here if it is near as 6.
And just to confirm, we are quorum.
Yes, we are. 5's quorum.
Okay. Any declarations of interest and requests for dispensations?
Only that I'm the ward councillor for the Carlton ward, as are you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and I have been reading messages on the Facebook community web pages there. Pages.
Well, I know Penrith East Town Council, which is also, I think, covers that school. So,
Right,
So does Penrith North.
Right.
The Penrith area, that's fine.
So we've established that we all are councillors.
I have an interest because I live on the estate where the original school was.
Thank you.
We're all totally involved.
We're all totally
We're all totally involved. Okay. Item number 3 is public participation. We don't have any public here. Have we had any questions submitted?
Questions submitted before the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is to discuss excluded items. Do we have any excluded items?
There's reports from Western Affairs councils.
3B. Oh, sorry, yeah, 3B. Have we got any reports from Western Affairs? Thank you. Okay, item 4 is excluded items. Are there any excluded items?
No reports, no.
Okay, so we'll skip over that one. So, item number 5 then, the main reason why we're here tonight, expansion of places at Beaconside CE Primary School consultation. To consider the Westmoreland and Furness Council consultation proposal on the expansion of places at Beaconside CE Primary School and to prepare a corporate response. So, I'm going to, do I need to propose anything before we discuss this? Or
It's a consultation.
So, questions, comments, anything to say?
Can I type as you talk? So
Can you?
we'll see.
Okay,
I can send in what I'm about to say because I attended the consultation meeting on Monday evening at the school, which sadly was which was attended by I think from what I could gather, there were only teaching staff there from other primary schools, mainly in senior positions, and governors. I couldn't, I may be wrong, but I don't think there was a parent there, which is unfortunate, and it's not clear to me how effective it was communicated to particularly the children of the school, but more so the residents of Carlton, which are most affected by this. My view is a letter should have been sent to every member of Carlton, because the school kids, the parents of the school children, may have access to a website, know about that, I don't know.
We got an email.
Right, okay. Well, there was well, in terms of parents, it was a disastrous turnout. I can send Ian these notes of key points, and these are points that I compiled from what Hilary Snell also attended the meeting, and she made points, and the point that she particularly wanted me to make tonight was that how have we got to the position where it's possible that with a consultation day ending on October the 31st, we're in a position where we might have to give Section 106 money back to the developers and not use it. And this was a point that was made at the meeting. We may lose it, and if we lose it, it goes back to the developers. Okay, so the points between us that we put together was the impact on new homeowners. When a lot of people bought their houses on the Carlton estate, there was a school on the map when they bought their houses. I think it must be terrible for them to see that school taken from that map now. I don't know if it would have an actual impact on the value of those houses, but it may have actually caused a downturn in what those houses are worth. But more so, the inconvenience of probably more than walking distance to Beaconsfield School every day to collect and take back pupils. That's the first point. I think that we all deserve a detailed conversation of how we've got to this point where we're being told that Section 106 money may go. Because what that means in essence, and what I took away from the meeting the other night, was that this consultation ending on October the 31st, if it doesn't go the way the one proposal they're making goes, we may not be able to progress with anything, because the Section 106 money will go, which is now proposed to expand the school places at Beaconsfield. And I think we need an explanation of how Westmoreland and Furness have allowed us to get into this position of being really pushed into one direction. Also, it was clear to me, although this wasn't my point, I didn't go with this point, my point was about we should have had a new school. But the other people at the meeting were raising the point that there was insufficient consultation with other schools who have spare capacity or could create more capacity to share this across schools in a much more collegiate way between schools. North Lakes in particular, I believe, have a number of spare places. And not least, I can't remember the number now, I've written it somewhere down. If you bear with me, I would give it in a second, but I think there are 280, the average primary school is 281 pupils, that's across the country. If they go ahead with this proposal, there will be more than double that at Beaconsfield. So it will be an excessively large primary school. And the problem with all of this for me is that if it had been developed on the site where it was proposed, it would have been at the heart of the community. It would have helped consolidate a new community. There aren't shops or pubs or other things on there, but a school, obviously, where parents meet at the gates because it's an easy walking distance, is actually, it's a real focus and should be at the centre of the community. Next point is the benefits of smaller schools. Smaller schools often excel in nurturing close-knit supportive communities among students, parents and teachers, and promotes an inclusive and nurturing environment for the growth and learning of children. A larger school, although I have no doubt the staff at all these schools are completely committed and excellent teaching staff, that I wouldn't question at all, but they're up against it in helping with the social, educational and development, the social, developmental and educational development of these children in a much bigger school that is beginning to look more like the size of a secondary school than a primary school. It's far easier if you've got a small community school to take care of these issues. And obviously, a small child on their first day in a school with over nearly 600 pupils, one short of 600, they're going to feel fairly lost and not as safe as they would in a small community-focused school. For me, it isn't a sustainable solution anyway, because as I said, 281 pupils, that's the average for a primary school. So with this school now, there is the capacity still to have 2 schools above the average intake of a school. So the argument that there aren't enough pupils for a school just falls by the wayside. And I didn't realise this the other night, but apparently in Penrith it's operated that no schools have catchment areas anymore, primary schools. They'll take children from anywhere in the town, which I don't know if they've got good reasons for that, and I accept that. They must have had good reasons for that, or they wouldn't do it. But the bad reason for that is I know of one family, a refugee family, who feel particularly vulnerable, where one child had to go to one primary school and another one, a very near age cohort, had to go to another school. That surely can't be right. In terms of the long term, the sustainability of it, we're going to get bigger. We're going to have more affordable houses. There's 76 affordable houses on Inglewood Road that are currently being filled. Affordable houses go to young families. Young families have children needing school places. So it seems obvious that the infrastructure is going to have to be developed. But it's the infrastructure of the school. If they build on the capacity for 119 more pupils at Beaconside, that doesn't take into account the toilets, the assembly rooms, the meeting places, the play facilities. Those places won't expand, or will they? I mean, it's hard to expand an assembly hall in the middle of a school, surrounded by classrooms. So the overall infrastructure might be under threat as well. But I think my biggest disappointment was that there was no alternatives. For me, a consultation is, these are the options. What do you think about these various options? There was one option put on the table, and for me, the consultation meeting was about explaining why that option was the only option and why it was a good option. And clearly, not everybody at the meeting agreed, and certainly, emphatically, the people there from school said this wasn't the only option. There were alternative viable models that could have been operated about expansion of classrooms, classroom places, which could have been shared across the schools. But for me, I'd still like to find out how this went wrong in terms of a school. Because we know already, if you try and book a doctor's appointment, you have to wait 2 or 3 weeks for a telephone call sometimes. If you want to book a National Health Service appointment, the infrastructure of the town is creaking because of the rapid spread of the town, and schools are going to be no different now or in the future. So that was more or less what either me or Hilary said at the meeting the other night.
Councillor Jackson.
Yes, following on from this point, is there's a huge perception among residents in this town that all this building is going on and the services aren't keeping up. Education is front and centre right now, but always people say, well, where are the new doctors, where are the new dentists? And we keep saying that we can get things on 106s, and then nothing happens. And then the 106 money is in danger of going back to schools because plans aren't put in place, various options are not put in place, and then fallback plans aren't put in place. So we end up trying to chase our tails with no possible chance of future-proofing the town. It's always reactionary. What should we have done 5 years ago is what seems to be on the table at every opportunity. And it's not just the new school, it undermines all the other schools. Councillor Knights mentioned that there are places at North Lakes, but they're talking about phasing out the special education needs provision at North Lakes so that they won't accept new pupils. They will continue to support the other one, but then there won't be year 3, there won't be year 4, so it all phases out. So they're undermining the provision of other schools, so they can't compete. So Beaconside becomes this, I suppose you'd call it centre of excellence, but that leeches, in effect, off other schools who would be able to offer that opportunity. And when you focus too much provision in one place, you lose redundancy. You limit the options in a town, and it's not acceptable. There's also the problem about residents around Beaconside. It's already very dangerous on those roads at school drop-off and pick-up times. My mum lives on the little extra addendum to Brentfield Way, and all of those junctions and pull-ins are filled with cars. The residents' parking doesn't extend that far, and I'm not saying that's a solution or anything, but there's no double yellow lines. There are one-way roads all around, and people are parking all over the place. You might another, shall we say, 50 cars to the mix there. And it's the same problem at the other schools as well. But a new dedicated school gets to fix all that, gets to say this is the car park for all those new cars. you can, admittedly this town doesn't do designing well from the get-go particularly effectively, but we could, with a new school, design something that is fit for purpose, not something that's 40, 50, 60 years old and trying to expand in an area where it's hemmed in.
Well,
Which one? Why don't you go?
I don't know where to start because this has triggered me quite a bit really. Just from the moment that I saw it, I felt that it felt there's two parts to it to me. That there's a response that we're expected to give, which is like the what, and there's also the method about how it's been delivered as well, which I think needs to be as part of the response. Because I couldn't make the meeting, we've been given very little time. You know, I think there's 20 working days from the start of the consultation to the end, and about 9 if you knew in time to be able to attend the meeting. And at the bottom of the letter of this very flimsy kind of like report, it says, please note that it is not possible to enter into individual correspondence. So it's very, very kind of like underhand form of consultation, really. And apart from that, which kind of like is really important, the actual issue, I think, is possibly apart from climate, which is a bigger picture for the whole of the world, as you might say, for Penrith. One of the biggest issues we've ever had to deal with at the town council, but it's been presented as something really quite kind of straightforward and ordinary. Like, there is an elephant in the room, but it's not the elephant that they've presented that we should be looking at. And in the way that it's presented, I think we should look at how the council, the new council, is starting to potentially approach us or approach the public. Because I will say this, it's been in my head all weekend, it feels like the slow death of the state. Because this is, like healthcare, like social care, like many things, education is a statutory issue. And there doesn't appear to be anything in this which is statutory. I mean, we should be starting to now ask questions about how are we going to expect our council, and being part of the even part of that, to look at our services in the future, including education. And it feels as though it's been presented in such a way, like has already been said, that like sort of I didn't actually know what response really they wanted, except basically to just rubber stamp it with them. So what was the point? I kind of, which is why I've spent more time thinking about the bigger sense of it and the bigger sense of like kind of how they've done it rather than the what. The other concern that I had was that like at a certain level, the presentation of this, I mean, Beaconside has a blue uniform. And I know that's maybe not that important, but I think it is. And like sort of there's like the children who are being talked about as numbers in this, and I know in the statutory section we have to have numbers in that respect, but the children here are going to be seeing, hopefully, the next century. They might even be working into the next century, and we'll be further along the hill and in another place. But there doesn't seem to be any sense of what this is about for children, for their future, as well as what that means for the town. It just seems to be like, I mean, at some level, because I wasn't at the meeting, I didn't get the sense of the, if you don't spend it, we'll lose it kind of thing. But it is about a fund that comes from an outside source, rather than also funding which comes, or we should be asking for or looking for, to come from the statutory sector also. And the last thing that really kind of I was thinking about was perhaps just how it's presented as well. That like, there's quite a lot here about SEND pupils, so special educational needs and disabilities. And it feels as though they're being used a little bit in this to try and like make it look as how important it is. But really, what are the figures for those students? Because given the lockdown and various other issues, there will be a lot more students with special educational needs, apparently, neurodiversity, whatever. And disabled children don't necessarily have special educational needs, although they're more likely to have. So, although I know that's an acronym that belongs elsewhere, it's kind of like by looking at those issues about special educational needs and disabled children, that we need really to look at a much larger picture about how we can approach the idea potentially of a new school. And with that, also the other services which would be affected potentially by the the 106, like dentists and hospitals, because the people that might come to Penrith in the new buildings are not going to be Penrith people, and I don't mean that in terms of people as incomers, as off-comers, but their aspirations in some of these bigger houses in terms of like, so it's not really the new builds that are going to like be about the low income families, but that's going to affect the secondary education too, because the aspirations for the comp or the grammar, etc., are going to be affected by a lot of this also. And I think that it's just like a sticking plaster to try and deal with something which actually begs a much bigger question that we should be asking.
Yeah, no, again, I would like to, I tried to think of some points that were kind of dissimilar to ones that may have been made. So I want to try and put, picking up on Paul's kind of selling point. Myself and my son are both autistic, so I would like to put things across from that perspective. There was, like you said, a lot of things in that proposal about send places, send children, that I wanted to kind of make it a bit more practical. So it would make sense to increase places in a school that already has that facility, already has that capacity. The inside are pretty good at that, probably, and it would make sense to do that. However, in practical terms, as an example from me and my family, again, I know n equals 1 isn't a whole study, but it will be representative of other people as well. We find it difficult to get our son to school a lot of the time. We do. Although Beaconside isn't a huge distance to walk, it's not huge, it's significant from Cowles and Meadows. We are forced to use our car to drive to Beaconside because of the needs of our child. Simply because the walking transition from our house to that school is quite significant. So if we were to walk, it would take a relatively long time. It would increase the likelihood or increase the opportunity of the school refusal that we experience. It would. The opportunity for stuff to kick off as we're walking along.
Sorry.
So that would make our situation worse, if we didn't use our car. It would add time for the anxiety to build up, it would add time for the school refusal to happen. So I'm absolutely, although my son is in year 6 and this won't affect him at all, he'll be gone then. It will affect the people in our situation. So my point was more about making the school experience more comfortable. I think that has been hit on already. Both because of the proximity to people's homes, to people's residences, and also because of the size of the school. Okay, that's been hit on. If this goes ahead, the inside will be humongous. It'll have loads of kids. It'll be more daunting for lots of children, lots of people with send needs and stuff like that. So that was the point I was going to make. It was just from that perspective, and I thought I'd put it in a way that was a bit more kind of practical for experience. Like I said, n equals 1 isn't a study. It's not based on just one person, one family, but there will be people who are in that position as well, who will probably appreciate a school near to them. So you can drive or less distance.
I take everything in that everybody said. I'm just thinking about really the experienced staff at North Lake School for the SEND pupils, and if they're being phased out, that group, that specialist group, what happens to the very experienced staff? What happens to the the head of the school at Beaconside, will they be in charge of all of the school? It used to be in a junior school, didn't it? There were 2 heads, and then latterly it's become amalgamated with 1 head. Will it go back to having 2 heads or not? Will there be money in the pot for that? It sounds like it's going to be a phased development anyway, so much each year starting in 26. I think there are so many questions, so many questions. My first question was, do Persimmon actually own the land that the school is going to be built on? And I believe it does belong to them, but I also believe that it hasn't been built within 4 years of school, that land could go back to the council from whence it came. So that needs to be looked into. There were so many ponderables. You're absolutely right. It's a very brief thing we've been given really to debate. It's not really in depth, and it seems as if, to me, as if we're just talking about a solution they've already thought through as the best case, using the 106 agreement money to fund the extra pupils in the school, and presumably enough staff, presumably experienced staff, presumably the head, I don't need any more, a second head or a deputy head over one part of the school. It's a big site actually, isn't it? Geographically, it's quite a spread, Beaconside. So probably, yes, could accept these extra numbers. Like you say, Council announced it going into the realms of maybe secondary size schools, small secondary, but yeah, daunting for the little ones coming in, reception and infants, very daunting. And, to my mind, it would have been so much better had figures allowed it, had these school journeys allowed it, for there to be a reason to build a new school on the site and the development, personal development. My take on that is that, well, the school wasn't there when the families moved in, therefore they had to find provision for their children elsewhere, and have they been actually, looking around, oh, well, we'll go to that's British school, it's on the way to where somebody works or whatever. There are various reasons why people do take children to different schools, but it has almost, if you like, been made essential that they do that because there wasn't a school on the doorstep. And at that area of town, you just look at the map we've been given, which is actually on the walking cycling map, and you just look at the provision of schools, and they're all mainly on the west side. There's absolutely nothing, apart from the private school, Hunter Hall, on the east side. There's nothing there. It is a big geographical gap, if nothing else. Yeah. So that's my take on it.
I'll just come back on a couple of things, very, very small things, but just the figures that I tried to remember. I believe there are 480 pupils currently at Beaconside, and the plan would be 198, which would make it 599 pupils. I do need to emphasise that I think that it's an excellent school with excellent staff, and I wouldn't want us to, in our response, to be any way suggest that we'll have anything but good faith in the teaching staff that are already there. I would like to say the consultation portal, which I filled in today, on the Westmoreland Furnace website, allows one thin strip, so you can see half a sentence you're writing at a time. So to write something coherent, or to write something more than 2 or 3 lines, is very difficult. And somebody did cover this, but I would be remiss if I didn't cover this, because as a councillor in that area, I know one of the things that people complain about, the local residents, their biggest issue is the car parking and congestion. And there is apparently some legislation being considered, either from local councils or government, to actually restrict traffic around schools because of the toxic fumes that are most harmful to children than they are to older age groups. And if you consider that there'll be, 600 possible kids being dropped off, I know that there'll be 2 or 3 kids in some cars, but it's already a problem in that area, and the roads aren't designed for it. Around the back it's a one-way system, and the final point is, I don't know the exact way this works, but one person who introduced himself to me was, I think he called himself the executive director of the school. And I don't know if that means he's the head or not, the way these work, but he told me he was the executive director of Milburn, Clifton and Beaconside together. So he had overall executive responsibility for them. So there were 3 schools already that he was working with. And admittedly, I think Milburn, I think I've got this right, is the smallest school in the country. So it's not a massive extra responsibility, but that's the situation.
Yeah, no, right. You know, they stay open, these little schools can stay open, and they'd be really great class books for the pupils from, sorry. I'm not just
I'm just acknowledging that he's next, that's all right.
All right, yeah, no, it's just, you know, I forgot what I'm going to say now. I agree with Councillor Knight, I agree with Councillor Donald, everybody really. It's a thin document and not much.
I'm going to expand on Councillor Knight's point again about toxicity of the air. The town bus doesn't run at peak times. You can't get around the town unless in a car. It's half an hour walk from where I live, now on Daffodil Drive into the centre of town. Not to other schools, it's half an hour into the centre of town. Further, if you're at the other end, probably 40 minutes? 14 minutes. It's an isolated development. It's going to be more so. So 2 wider points. 1, we need to look at better, wider infrastructure. Buses need to be peak time and more regular. And 2, if we're to have a master plan in this town of what we need in terms of schools and things, we need a community infrastructure levy. The funds need to be guaranteed and they need to be proportionate. Not just wish lists put on 106s saying we want this and this, which can then fall through the gaps. There need to be guaranteed funds that are paid as a matter of course by a developer, and that's a community infrastructure levy. So we need better buses, we need a community infrastructure levy.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. You know, a lot of what we've talked about tonight, the 106 agreement was made a long time ago, when the situation was very different. There was a larger open space there and not a lot of houses. The 106 agreement is put in place to build a school. The development has gone ahead, and now we're at a stage where costs have gone up and there probably isn't enough money in that pot now to actually build a school. But this whole process just seems to be very opaque to me. It's not really a consultation. I think somebody's made a decision, and this is more of a justification document rather than a consultation. I think Penrith deserves better, and I think the idea of a master plan and actually, you know, sitting down and talking to everybody. There's a lot of people in Penrith who are sending their kids out to the little village schools. That's why there are places available in the big schools in town, because people want to put their kids into the kind of small school that you would get if they built one in Carlton. Nobody's talking about that. There's nothing about that in here. But how many people in Penrith send their kids out to what? And they're either driving out to those places, which is not good for the environment, or they're catching buses, which to some extent might even be funded by Westwood and Furness. So again, you know, there's expenditure there as well. It just feels rushed. It doesn't feel like anybody's given it the proper consideration about, you know, what's best for Penrith.
And that process of them going into smaller schools is used to justify limiting school places in the town. Say, oh, we don't need them, they go to the smaller schools. Well, why do they go to the smaller schools? Because they want that sort of
school environment. Yeah.
So instead of facing the problem before it becomes a problem, they see it happening and think, oh, well, we don't need to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. I've not looked at the SEND's provision rules and regulations. You probably know more about it than I do, but when I was a governor, I thought every school had to have a provision, so I'm quite surprised to find that they're talking about phasing it out of some of the schools. That feels like, what was the phrase you used?
The slow death of the state.
That's the one, the slow death of the state. It feels like you take away that provision in one of the schools, you're effectively saying this school is now subpar, which is only one step away from a poor Ofsted report and then a school closure. Or a school being absorbed.
It feels like being frightened to bite the hand that feeds, in that sense.
Yeah.
And it just feels like a tick box. Our response is the expected response, I think, is to say yes to a tick box exercise, which perhaps begs a question which isn't really for now, but begs a question to start asking But that isn't to say that we should answer favourably to the response, because there may not be anything we can do immediately.
Anyone else got anything else to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring the words of, if you're kind of looking for input from the community. And children are mentioned, you know, children aren't having a say in any of this.
No.
We're just sitting here talking about it. We've been imposed a document with absolutely no other option whatsoever. I just wanted to bring the words of a child who is in primary education just to the debate. So I don't know how this came about. My son does, again, find it quite difficult to communicate his thoughts and ideas, but he must have picked up on me and my wife talking about it, and he just kind of, he had a lot to say about this, and he just, he piped up like it was last night or the night before, and he said, in his words, there are lots of kids on the estate, and having a school on the estate will help them all to become friends. It would help children on the estate get on better.
Yeah.
And there are issues of children getting on the estate as well.
Yeah.
So that was his words, that's the words of a child in primary education.
Well done, Robson.
Yeah.
The whole process of schools and the number of places in schools is very cyclical as well. When my wife and I moved up 9 years ago, from Surrey, we couldn't get a place at any of the schools in Penrith for both of our children. And as it turned out, we were nearer to Plumpton than we were to Penrith anyway, so they both ended up at Plumpton School, who did have provision. I suspect if we were moving up now, we probably could get spaces for both of them if they were the right age to get into a primary school. But who's to say what the situation is going to be like in a few more years with all of these developments? What I do know is that I had one person, I'm not going to use any names, but I had one person contact me from Carlton who has recently moved up from London with her husband, and they chose Carlton specifically because all the documentation that you get when you buy a house says there's going to be a school there, and they were planning to start a family. Having worked in London for many years, they decided that they wanted the slower lifestyle and all of the other attractions of our lovely town, and are now very disappointed to find that there's not going to be a school provision for them.
Can I just say one encompassing point that I think sums all this up is, have West London and Furness Council asked themselves the question, is this proposal in the best interests of children and their community? Simple as that.
Yeah.
And if they think it is, I'd be amazed.
Okay.
So moving on.
Yeah.
Obviously everyone's had a chance to speak, and we do need to try and form a response. So I've captured, well, as you were all speaking, and Councillor Max, you don't mind emailing me on behalf. You're fantastic. Fantastic, thank you. Are you content for me to form a response and then to be circulated for common agreement?
I am, but the response, I think the key about the response is that we are not in favour of this proposal.
Yeah, that's come round across loud and clear.
Yeah. It's not just. I know it is, but I mean, it's not just a case of contributing to the consultation with the arguments.
What did you say? The key response is
We're not in favour.
we're not in favour.
Not in favour.
Right, thank you. I just didn't know those few words.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because you can put the arguments into the consultation, as many people will, but we are clearly saying we are against this proposal.
Yeah.
I think that needs to, from what I picked up high on the letter, I will include the positive points of the views of the council on the positive teaching experience and how the council values the school and how it performs at the moment. And I think there's some general points around proximity, location, traffic, transport, wider infrastructure in the town in general, what is the long-term effect, a long-term view of an increasing population, geographical location, that there is no school provision on the east side of town. Picked up on Paul's points. Spoke about SEND and then there being loss of experience and experienced teachers to the town potentially. So I think, yeah, but we picked up most things down, phrase that into a letter, circulate it as a draft, and then if I put a time scale on it for comments, and then send it off next week. It won't be me, so I'll try and send it off around tomorrow with a view that set a deadline for mid next week, and I'll ask Ross if she can compile responses.
Do you have anything about the proposal itself in there, as in like what we were saying about the actual proposal being just...
About school size,
No, just about
The method.
the method of it, yeah.
the method of it in respect of how you perceive the consultation to be.
Yes. there's no
Only
option.
about selling one proposal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes.
And really bullying us into not going against it because of the potential loss of Section 106 money.
And if I can speak, sorry, the observation that we've made that actually we have observed that method, and we don't really want to see that again when it comes to other things.
Notice board government.
Well, of
Picking up on
course,
notice
but it
board.
seems to be, and I won't use the phrase again, but it seems to be one way to do it is to kind of like play along with those needs.
Being the only proposal on the consultation is a process rather than a consultation, and with some extra context behind it.
Could we also point out, because I think it is important, although it may not really matter, that the screen form is blue. I think it's respect, a matter of respect actually.
It's a bit of a blooper, certainly, isn't it?
You know,
Yeah, it's what.
I mean normally I wouldn't mind, but
Okay. Are we ready to move on then?
I think we are.
Yeah, that's okay.
Is everyone happy on that way forward? Do you want to agree that's the way forward?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 6, statement of licensing policy. This is just to note that West Midlands Furness Council are undertaking a 12-week consultation on the draft statement of licensing policy 2024 to 29 and to consider a corporate response. My understanding from talking to him before the meeting is that these are largely just changes to wording to make it more plain English.
Quite significant documents. So because they had no track changes in as part of the consultation, I contacted Western Furness if we could highlight me to anything significant in respect of changes or amendments to legislation, etc., that would be relevant for me to share with you tonight. I did get a response from the officer that in effect is saying there's no significant changes in either of the policies from those in place from the former district councils, been picked up from the former district councils and being reconsulted on now. Both are statutory guidance, and there are some grammatical amendments and change of use to plain English. So there's nothing substantive in respect of changes to either of the policies.
Could I just ask one question? I know in the licensing policy, I can't remember now, but the rate at which hackney carriage and taxi drivers charge people for journeys, is it going to be the same throughout Western Furness now? I would have thought they may be working towards a joint approach, but I'm not sure that Eden, South Lakes, Borough, whatever, had the same rates before.
Don't know, but is that a question you want to frame in your response?
It would be useful to know if we're going to. I mean, I would have thought they would try and have a council-wide rate, but obviously we're totally different places, aren't we? You know, journeys in Barrow are going to be tiny. Journeys up here are going to be.
We increased it when Eden District Council was still around. We increased it, didn't we? And there was a long discussion at the meeting about the different rates across the county and across the country.
Yeah.
My recollection is that they decided not to try to bring them all in line because of the differences in things like income and so forth.
I mean, that was when we were all different boroughs and district councils, but now we're all under one, well, two.
No, it'd be interesting.
Now we're under one council. I would like to know.
So I propose a response of no recommended amendments to the statement of licensing policy. However, we ask the following question: whether hackney fees are going to be consistent across the board of Western Furness.
Yeah.
Everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then item 7 is the same process for the gambling policy. Again, a 12-week consultation from Westmoreland and Furness on the draft statement of gambling policy 24 to 27. And again, the same kind of changes.
Yes, grammatical and transfer to plain English.
Anybody got any comments or pointing? No? Okay. So,
Before as a response, so there's no amendments.
everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then item 8, LC WIP, Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. This is just to consider confirming support for the Penrith Core Walking Zone identified in the LC WIP. We did confirm support for it in 2022. However, we are now effectively a new council. Just trying to find the report.
So the council endorsed the LC WIP plan, infrastructure plan in on the 18th of July 2022 at full council. The LC WIPs, for those that don't know, are sports strategy for active travel, cycling and walking for commuting and purposes as opposed to leisure and recreation primarily. The plan, when it was endorsed by the council, was an unfunded plan. Westmoreland Furness Council have what we can say is an opportunity to potentially apply for some funding to start delivery of some elements of the Penrith LC WIP plan, and in doing so, because a year or so has passed, if not more, I've asked that the Town Council reconfirms its support for the Penrith Core Walking Zone, which would be the feature of any initial funding bid. And that is the plan attached to Appendix A that was included in the original LC WIP plan. We're asking the council to endorse, reconfirm its support for the core walking zone plan as included in the LC WIP infrastructure plan.
And also to give delegated authority to the Economic Development Officer and Deputy Town Clerk to work with Westmoreland and Furness to support future scheme development. Anybody got any questions? Comments? No? Everyone happy to confirm our support?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to give delegated authority to the Economic Development Officer and Deputy Town Clerk to progress it. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that just
Just,
next meeting. Find the right page. So item 9, next meeting. Just to note, the next meeting full council is scheduled for Monday, the 20th of November at 6 PM in here. Details of which will be on our website in due course. Thank you everyone very much.